Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We'll just or evening, wherever it is you're joining from. Sometimes when I forget the time zone. So thank you for joining, and we'll start shortly. We'll just wait for about 2 minutes to allow a few people to join us, and then we'll get on with it. In the meantime, you could just drop in the chat section where you're joining us from. Yeah, let's get to know you a little bit. So I'm Adi, and I'm joining from Toronto in Canada. And I have with me Fatih. Where are you joining from?
Hi, I'm Fatima and I'm in Edinburgh, Scotland, as United Kingdom.
Thank you for joining us again this evening. And this webinar is just to share information with you if you are considering studying in Canada or the UK and you're weighing your options. This is just to share more information with you, and it might perhaps help you to make up your mind, or any questions that have been lingering in your mind and you want to ask us. We are willing to answer them, and we'll take it over. So for now, I'll talk in general about immigration. I'm a licensed immigration consultant. I will give a detailed intro about myself. Licensed immigration consultant in Canada, and so I would say immigration is, I talk and do immigration every day. That's what I do professionally, full time, nothing else. So immigration in general is, again, what I talk about, and ultimately we've used this passport pictures because for many people who want to immigrate, their desire is to ultimately, eventually become citizens of this country. So whether it's a Canadian passport or a UK passport, you can relate with this image. So quickly, I'll let Fatima introduce herself. She's joining us from Edinburgh in Scotland, UK. So, Fatima, no, sorry. Before you ask me to introduce yourself, I'll just say very quickly in terms of housekeeping. Um, while I'm licensed to do immigration in Canada, I'm an immigration consultant, RCIC. Fatima is not, so she's not a UK immigration lawyer or anything like that, but she's a content creator, and every advice, every information we get on this call is purely our opinion and from our perspective. It's in no way replacing immigration advice from unauthorized representative, right? And even I, that I'm an authorized representative, you'll have to have a one-on-one consultation with me for you to take that as, should I say, being consultation for your case, or like legal advice for your case in particular. So again, it's just for information purposes and not meant for um, to replace immigration advice by an authorized representative. Over to you, Fatima. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Ade. Hi, everyone. Fatima again. And yes, I'm here to like share a bit of information I have about UK immigration. Um, D, she has said a disclaimer, and I'm going to repeat it as well because it's going to be coming from me. A disclaimer: I am not an immigration consultant. Neither am I an expert in this field. I do this in my spare time, and I like to like bring this information to you. If you're willing to like come to UK, or maybe you're willing to like um weigh your options, if you're willing to like go to Canada or you want to come to UK. So yeah, I'm here. So during the day, I'm a research scientist, and I've been in UK for about 13 years now. And in my spare time, I just go read up about immigration. How can I help people just like myself? When I say people just like myself, I was an immigrant from Nigeria, and you want this information, and I keep thinking, how can I help people to get this information out, or more like to like help them start from a particular point. So that's why I'm here today. So don't take everything on board. More like use this information as basis. See someone like D, and they see someone like D for like a thorough like application processes and immigration details. So that's just me for now. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you, Fasi, for that. Just to clarify, if you hear her calling me D, because we come from way back. We both attended the University of Lagos. So fondly amongst my friends, I'm called D, but D personally. Um, so I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, and I'm specialized in permanent and temporary resident visas, such as those for work, study visits. You may have seen some of our information sessions or webinars or adverts regarding business immigration mostly. But we are doing this webinar today to kind of let people know that we're not just about, business immigration. We do types of immigration applications, including sponsorship for family members and others. So I'm licensed to represent clients for all federal programs and some specific provincial programs as well. And I'm an active member of the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants of Canada, as well as the Canadian Association of Professional Immigration Consultants in Canada, CAPIC. I'm a certified project management professional, and I have a master's degree from the UK, University, what was that? Avenue University. I've forgotten because Pati and I were both doing our masters at the same time in Aberdeen in Scotland as well. So and then I got myself talk about going to Canada, I'm sorry, UK as a student and then now becoming a Canadian citizen. I have seen it all, and this session is to provide information to you and to help many people who are aspiring to achieve the same to be able to do the same. So you can expect that, we would approach your application with the highest level of analytics, professionalism, and expertise and experience. So, why would you want to study to immigrate? I'll just I've kind of categorized it into two broad categories, but sometimes you find they're even intertwined, and it's hard to say which one is economic, which one is social, but it's tried anyway. So, if pattern is not perfect enough, again, they are fairly quite intertwined, and it's difficult to separate them. So, economic benefits and why you should consider it, I would say enhance skills and job opportunities. In that, once you go for a master's degree, some people may even say, but I already have a master's degree from my home country. Why should I consider another master's degree? Again, master's degree from a different country, um, and I would say the most advanced countries, I mean, UK, Canada, they're part of the G7, right? The top 7 countries in the whole world. It's always a higher level anyway, and maybe even a different course, right? Or you might even have a previous master from the UK, and maybe considering Canada may be something for you. So you could always enhance your skill. Um, with those enhanced skills, you can also find job opportunities. Job opportunities also in some of the countries like the UK and UK and Canada, they are fairly more available than in most people's home countries because there is just a shortage of labor to do some of these jobs. Like in the UK, I know that in the health sector, there is a huge demand for many skilled workers. And in Canada, I mean, it's all industries from IT to healthcare to cleaning to carpenters, plumbers, you name it. For some of you, you're even very well knowledgeable about all the updates that have been happening with immigration. So, yeah, there is a labor shortage, and those opportunities are out there in both the UK and Canada. Also, you'll be able to have increased earning potential. Most people in their home country, if the job is being offered at, I'm not sure, maybe, I'm not sure exactly what the jobs are being offered for, but generally, I'm sure that there are some specific jobs like in the oil and gas sector in most people's home countries, they pay very well and maybe even higher than what they might be able to keep and take home in because of the lower taxes in their home country. But generally, people are able to earn higher in the UK and Canada, as well as cutting edge education. There are many top rated universities and colleges across the UK and Canada. Of course, you can expect that the education from those schools are top rated education as well. And then the global experience you're able to get because you are offered an opportunity to work, maybe in an internship or a co-op if it's intertwined with the program, or even just work permit to get after you graduate. You're able to get world-class work experience that you can take back home to your country if you want to, and you'll be able to bring more to the table, in your career. There might also be entrepreneurship opportunities, right? Once you have a different work permit, that's what we call it in Canada, where it's not tied to any employer. You might be able to start off on your own as an entrepreneur because you have the eligibility to work. You are able to, and do, whatever business you might have been nurturing. And these environments I'll call them enabling environments for whatever business opportunities you might be thinking of. So because we do a lot of business immigration, some of our clients actually even consider tuning first as a student, understanding the environment, right, the business environment, and then ultimately still doing business immigration. You also would have access to the world. I'm a Nigerian by birth, and I cannot discount that. And sometimes, as a Nigerian in Nigeria, you might be limited to be able to do business or do some things, online and elsewhere, just because of that title of being Nigerian. So, but the Canadian citizen now, I'll say there's less barrier and less restrictions. I mean, if even travel, some of the countries have banned Nigerian citizens from being able to visit, just visit, not even to like work or do anything. So you can imagine how limiting that can be. If you had a business partner who was there, who lived there or does business there, what it means is that there's just that barrier already because of the citizenship you hold. So again, coming as a student and then transitioning to work permit and then citizenship would be that access to the world and a second citizenship. So some of the social benefits while you consider studying to immigrate, I would say, being able to live in this top countries in the world would offer safety, security, high standards of living. I don't think I need to say so much more, but from the political instability and some of the social and security concerns most of our clients have, we're able to understand their desires. I moved to Canada just 5 years ago, so I can relate. I know what we think when we decided to move to Canada. I believe Fatih herself has been in the UK for 13 years. I also was in the UK at that time, got a 2-year postgraduate work permit, but didn't stay back at that time. Went back to Nigeria because we had faith in our country. But several years down the line, we just had to still reconsider and say, let's do this now. Otherwise, we might just regret not taking this step now. If we get our citizenship and we come back, at least we always know that there's a second place we can call home and, go to and have this fun. So it's really about choice, somewhat when you decide to come as a student and then transfer to permanent residence and citizenship. So again, UK and Canada offers those patterns. The cultural exposure and language skills as well. Sometimes this is not very well appreciated, I should say. But from my schooling in the UK more than 13 years ago to being in Canada and just living in the country, and again, the cultural exposure just gives you the ability to be able to achieve whatever it is you want. Even when you're talking in an interview, if you ever go for a job, the confidence level with which you're talking. I've met with because I tend to interface with, say, franchisors or business owners and on behalf of my clients. And when I interact with them, they'll be like, okay, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from Nigeria. I'm like, oh, really? Nigeria? You guys take that, well in English and all. I'm like, okay, what do you guys really think of Nigerians? But ultimately, I know that not all Nigerians, should I say, would be able to have the confidence or again, maybe because of some limitations, but being able to come to school here, one of the things, for instance, when you're schooling abroad, you'll find is there are so many presentations, right? You are forced to stand in front of your class and present your work, even from a very young age, because like my kids are in grade 10 and grade 2, and I have a toddler as well. So I know what they tell them to do in school, like presenting even as young as they are in grade 1. So all those cultural exposure and language skills you're able to develop as well. The family's well-being and benefits and education, again, is one of the biggest reasons that many of us do this. The healthcare is free in Canada, same as the UK. education as well in primary and secondary school. You could opt to send your kids to a private school out and pay out of pocket, but ultimately the public schools are free and very good level of education. And there's little segregation in terms of when those kids graduate, right? I mean, I'm Nigerian again, so I'll speak to Nigeria in particular. So when some kids go out of a private school, especially primary and secondary school, and the ones that go to public school, you kind of feel like a disparity in terms of the level of quality of education. But here, public or private, there is no difference, right? If anything, they're all taught at the world class level and are able to function at a world class level. That's what we're talking about in terms of public free education in Canada or the UK, healthcare, citizenship, and then job opportunities, even for the children in their future. So, getting back in terms of benefits, what we'll be talking about in particular, we'll talk about UK, I'll talk about Canada. And this is just like an agenda of what we'll be going over is introduction, requirements, what next after studies, the PR pathways, conclusions. We'll first freestyle and say whatever it is that comes to mind for both UK and Canada, and then we're going to compare. And it's your choice at the end of this to decide which one do I want to pursue, and then question and answer. So, I'll over to you for the UK student visa part of this presentation. Okay.
Thank you, Dick. Yeah, so if you're considering coming to UK and you want to come to UK through the study route, which is this UK student visa, you can apply if you're above 16 years of age. That is not to say if you're below 16 years, you cannot apply. Or if you're doing that, then you'll be needing more requirement if you're under 16 years. But I believe most people now most adults want to come in with their family. So that's why we're focusing on above 16 years of age. And what are the things you need to come to study in UK? So if you're coming to study, you have to get an admission from a UK licensed university. That's UK's licensed student sponsor. So they're university. And how do you know when you've gotten this admission? Obviously, you get an email and they'll provide you a reference number, which we call the confirmation acceptance of studies CAS number. And another thing you need to know is if you come into UK, you have to be able to be responsible for yourself in terms of your tuition, your living expenses, and every other expenses that comes with it. We all know that it's not that cheap. So guys, if you're willing to come to UK, you have to consider funds as well. And also, it's very, very important you be able to understand English. You have to be able to speak it. You have to be able to write it, and you have to be able to read as well. So if you're willing to come to UK, there has to be a certain level of proof of English. And if you
I think, could you please try to project your voice a little bit longer? I'm seeing some people saying that they're having trouble hearing you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, guys. Can you hear me now? So I'll probably go back to what I've said previously, just for people that didn't hear me. So we're talking about UK student visa. So if you're considering coming to UK for your degree, either master's or PhD or any other, you want to go to college, you have to be able to apply to, pardon me, excuse me. You have to be able to apply to one of the UK schools that are UK licensed schools. And how do you know when these schools are licensed? They have to offer you an admission. So when you want to come to any university in UK, you have to apply to these schools, get an admission. And how do you know where you get an admission? You'll be given a CAS number. That CAS number shows that this school can sponsor you to come to UK. And it's also very important if you're coming to UK, you have to have enough funds. You have to be able to more fend for yourself. We're talking about tuition, so you have to be able to pay for your tuition. You have to get your living expenses, and you have to get just basic living expenses. We're talking about accommodation and feeding and every other thing. Another requirement for you, if you're willing to come to UK, is you must have proof of English. So for some countries, if you're from an English-speaking country, it might not be required. But even if you're from Nigeria, there's a certain level of proof of English that might be required from you. So if you're willing to come to UK, you must be able to like speak English, read, and be able to understand English as well. And if you're between the age of 16 and 17, then you need a parental consent in the form of letter to say they will be responsible for your, your education in UK. And just of recent, so this is an update to UK student immigration just now. The students are no longer allowed to bring in their dependents coming January 2024. Okay. Before now, you're allowed to bring your dependent in. So if you've got like spouse, if you've got like partner, if you've got kids, you won't be able to bring them in come January 2024. Okay. Next slide, please. So like I said earlier, the requirement for UK student visa, you have to get an admission from a licensed UK university. And the tuition range, as your cost range, the cost tuition, it ranges between £10,000 to £20,000 per 1 year academic year. And 1 year academic year could be 9 months to 12 months. So this is not like a fixed tuition. So it's also dependent on the location. So sometimes if you're schooling in somewhere in England or maybe like London, it tends to be more expensive than if you're schooling in Scotland. So yeah, so you might want to consider location if you're willing to come to UK as well. Then your proof of fund, earlier on I talked about your tuition fee, your maintenance fee, and every other thing that comes with like proof of fund. This has to be in your account for 28 days, and then you apply within 31 days of you keeping this money in your account. Then say you're schooling in London. London, we know, is quite very expensive. If you're schooling in London, you have to be able to prove that you have £1,334 per month. Then you multiply this by the number of your course. So if your course is like 12 months, UK will think, okay, multiply by minimum of 9 months. So 1,334 times 9, in addition to your tuition fee. So if your tuition fee is like £10,000, so those are the funds you'll be keeping in your account for 28 days, and you apply 31 days from this time. Then if you're living outside London, say you're coming to Scotland, you're living in Edinburgh, then you expected to have like £1,023 per month, multiplied by 9 or multiplied by 12, in addition to your tuition fee in your account for 28 days, minimum of 28 days, then you apply within 31 days of this. And just now, if you're coming with your dependent, so it's still very much allowed for you to bring your dependent before January 2024. So if you're coming with your dependent, say you're coming with your wife or your husband, and you're schooling in London, so one of your dependent is expected to have £845 monthly. £845 times the duration of the main applicant's course. So if, for example, if my husband is a main applicant and he's coming to school in London, he's going to have £1,334 per month times 10, in addition to his tuition fee. And myself as a dependent coming under my husband's visa, I should have 845 times 9. All of this will be in the main applicant's account for minimum of 28 days, and you all apply within 31 days of this. But if you're living outside London, then it's going to be £680 for dependent, and that's just one dependent. So if you have like multiple, so if you've got kids, you've got 2 kids, then it's going to be times 2 of this amount. I hope this is clear to an extent. So yeah. Then what are the pathways after, the student visa? Like, how do you get to settle in UK after the student visa? So there are actually 2 main routes for you to like settle in UK after your student visa, and it's called the graduate route and the skilled route. So if you're coming on a student visa, UK allows you to stay for up to 2 years if you've come in for your master's, and up to 3 years if you've come for your doctoral degree. when you're on graduate route, there are no restrictions to this route. That means you can actually take up any job. You can do any job at any job you want to. You can decide to be on your own. You can decide to just take any job. There are no restrictions to these roads. That's what it's saying. And it doesn't require a job offer or sponsorship from an employer. That means you're not bind to a particular company if you're on this road. And the other road, which is the skilled worker road, it's not just for students. So if you're a student in UK and you're willing to stay in UK, you don't want to go through the graduate route, you can actually go to the skilled route. And the skilled route is actually for everyone, even from people who want to come from overseas to come to work in UK, you can come into the skilled route. All you need to do is get a licensed sponsor. So that means you have to get a certificate of sponsorship from a licensed employer, and then meet up some of the eligibility criteria. So most of the time is your experience in that particular field. You have to be able to provide your English competency. So more out for the purpose of this video, I won't be able to go into depth into this. I've discussed a bit of this in my YouTube video. So if you've got time, please go watch it. But then you need your English language proficiency. You have to be able to demonstrate that you have maintenance fund. Maintenance fund is similar to what I mentioned earlier in the student route. So in this case, you don't have tuition fee. You just want to be able to claim that, or you want to be able to prove that you've got enough money to at least sustain you when you come into UK. Because if you're coming for a job in UK, first few months you have to, because you say for example your rent, you have to pay your rent in advance. We do pay rent in advance. So you still have to have that fund to be able to pay your rent in advance, pay for your bills in advance, and pay for your feeding and everything in advance. And the good thing about these roads, which is the skilled worker road, is that it can lead to settlement, which is why someone like me is here today, because it wasn't directly from me, it was from my husband. He got a skilled job, got a sponsored job, then it then leads to settlement. So after 5 years, when you're on this road, you get your indefinite leave to remain, and a year after that, you get your citizenship in UK. Okay.
I think you want to talk about the fact that your husband first went as a student and then.
So which is one of the reasons we're talking about the student route. So myself and my husband came to UK through student route, and he was here before me, and just after his degree, or his master's, I mean, he got a job. Before then, he got the graduate route. Then it was called post-study work visa, but now it's called the graduate route. He got the 2 years graduate route, and the 2 years graduate route, the advantage of it is it gives you an opportunity to discover, more like to find your feet, to say. It lets you know, okay, which direction, which way. So it was on 2 years postgraduate work, and after that, he got a skilled work that sponsored him for 5 years. Being my husband, I was able to depend on him, and we were on same visa for 5 years. And after 5 years, we got our indefinite leave to remain, and now we both with our kids, we are all British citizens just now. So yeah, so if you're willing to come through the graduate route, I'm not going to discourage you. Yeah, it's a good route, but just bear in mind, come January 2024, you'll be able to bring your dependent. But if you get on skilled worker route, you're still allowed to bring your dependents. Okay. And if you're willing to reach out to me, you can reach out to me on my YouTube channel, which is Fatima Sani, and my Instagram is Sima Sani. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Sima. We will have a Q&A session at the end. We will have a Q&A session at the end, and feel free to leave your questions in the Q&A section of this webinar, and then we'll go through them one by one once we're done. So thank you. Feel free to follow her and see all of the lots of information that she put out there, including even settlement and things like that. Okay, so for the Canada student visa, a brief introduction. It's applicable to immigrants of all ages who are willing to study in Canada. By all ages, I mean even from primary school all the way to PhD and all of that. So you must get a letter of acceptance, from issued by a Canadian DLI. DLI is a Designated Learning Institute. And who are the Designated Learning Institutes? They're basically all primary and secondary schools, whether public or private, and publicly funded post-secondary schools. And by publicly funded secondary schools, I mean like community colleges and universities. So if you come to a post-secondary school that is a private school, um, you it's still a DLI, you might be able to come, but then those schools may not be eligible. I mean, let's say students or graduates from those schools may not be eligible for post um, graduate work permit, PGWP. So you want to ensure that if you're coming for study at a post-secondary level of education at a college or university, it's a publicly funded school so that you're eligible for postgraduate work permit. Because I know for many people, it's not just about the education. Those private post-secondary schools offer great education, but and can get you job ready, but you won't be eligible for the postgraduate work permit once you're gone. So that's just something to look out for because some people apply for schools and then it's only after they've gotten here, they've gotten their study permit, they realize, oh, wait a minute, I won't be eligible for PGWP. And then, yeah, nobody wants to be in that situation. So just an information session. Also, one of the most critical parts of Canadian study visas is you must show that you have enough funds to support yourself in terms of tuition and living expenses. And sorry, let's go back one more slide. Yeah, tuition, living expenses, and you must also have proof of English. And by proof of English, not necessarily that you have to do an IELTS. In some cases, some schools may require that you do an IELTS test, but just by being Nigerian and having a prior education from an English-speaking country may mean that you. Okay, so I'm getting a lot of comments that my voice isn't clear. So I'm going to try to use a headset because, again, the essence of doing this is to provide information. And if you're having trouble getting that information, then let me know if you can hear me better.
I mean, I could hear you, Dee.
Okay, please can somebody else let me know if you can hear me clearly in the chat and if it is clear now. Okay, I've heard that it is better now. Okay, so for the Canadian student visas, I'm just going to restart so that, people who had trouble hearing me can hear me clearly from the start. So for Canadian student visas, it's applicable to all immigrants of all ages, people who are coming to primary, secondary, or post-secondary school. And again, I mean all ages, even if you're 6 years old and you're coming to grade 1 in a private school or in a public school, Canada is willing to give you a study visa. And the point I also made about having a letter of acceptance from a Canadian DLI. DLI stands for Designated Learning Institutes. Basically, similar to the UK, schools that are authorized to issue, should I say, support students to apply for student visas. You can come as a visitor and go to maybe a beauty school that is not a DLI and study for less than 6 months. But if you want a proper study visa that enables you to work for 20 hours a week while you're studying and would make you eligible for a postgraduate work permit, then it has to be a DLI. And I was saying that now not all DLIs also offer postgraduate work permits. There are post-secondary schools. If they're not publicly funded and they are private, then they are not eligible, or their graduates are not eligible for PGWP. So many students, they see that the school is a DLI, they would have this long number, usually starts with a letter O, and they would just go with the school. But when they get here, they realize, oh, it's a private school and I will not be eligible for PGWP. And ultimately, we're just saying, watch out for that, ensure that the school is a publicly funded school and will make you eligible for PGWP in the future. Because, I mean, what's the essence of making all that expense? It's not cheap to come to any country, whether UK or Canada, as an international student. And then at the end of the day, you're not allowed to stay and work. So look out for that. You have to also show that you have enough funds to support yourself, tuition fees, living expenses, and all and sundry, right? If you're coming with your family, obviously you have to show more money than somebody who's not coming with their family. I'm going to talk about, how much money shortly. You must have proof of English, and by proof of English, I said that while some schools may be very sticky with the IELTS for various reasons, because maybe the program is like maybe an MBA, and they believe that the student has to demonstrate not just ability to speak English, but a high level of English. They may make it compulsory, but generally most schools will waive an IELTS test for students if they have had previous education in English, and if English is their main lingua franca in their country, like most students from Nigeria. So minors under 18 must provide evidence of parents' consent and support. And in some cases, there's a form that the government makes the parents and the custodian, sign and notarize that the custodian will look out for that minor who's under 18 when they're coming to school in Canada. Um, Dependents of students are welcome, provided again there is sufficient funds. There is no limit, I mean, to how many family members. If you're a family of 6, all of you are welcome. You just have to show that you can provide and fend for your family when you get here. And there is no rumor or news about them posting it anytime soon. But again, like with everything, like I tell people who are intending, make hay while the sunshine. Immigration rules changes all the time. It is what we know that it is today. It can change anytime. So the requirements for Canadian student visas, again, is an offer of admission. Like we said, we guide students to do that, or our clients, and we help them, in fact, because we're representative to many DLIs that offer PGWP across Canada and in many institutions across the UK as well. So we guide you in terms of how to obtain this offer of admission for whichever option you choose, whether UK or Canada. The tuition range for Canada schools is between 10,000 Canadian dollars to 25,000 Canadian dollars now. It would, and per year, right? If it's some schools are 18 months, some are 24 months. And if you're coming to a bachelor's degree, then it could be either 3 years or 4 years. So depending on the level of study, the course of study, you'll find like business and general arts programs at a college might be way cheaper than if you're going for an engineering program at a top school in Canada. So depending on the program and the field of study and the level of study and the school, the province, the prices, can range very widely like that. And if you compare this to, well, we'll go to comparisons later. Anyways, proof of funds to be shown in a 3, 6 months, or 12 months bank statement. Unlike the UK, where you just have to keep the funds for say 28 days, with Canada, they just want to see your bank statement. And it's not necessarily that the entire money has to have been there the whole time. It's really about the average balance. And I would always use the body language of the accounts. Not like you bring a 3 months bank statement and the opening balance of that account, was broke for like 2 months, and then suddenly you just put what, $50,000 as proof of funds for you and your family. Canada immigration doesn't work like that, except again, you can then justify why that money just came into your account. Perhaps you had an investment you just liquidated. In that case, we would ask you for evidence of that investment. Some people will liquidate their shares, or, again, it's really also about the body language, right? Do you have, like, I have somebody who once got approved, and again, their salary was a very good salary. The balance on the account wasn't fantastic. It didn't even meet this income that I'm showing here. I mean, sorry, not the income, sorry, the proof of funds amount, because again, it's not very specific in terms of this amount. These amounts that I've quoted are in the country specific. We have country specific, should I say, application guidance. Anyways, I'm not sure what to call it now. And it's the standard documents for Nigeria for instance, this amount, and even for the SDS category of students, I would not focus too much about SDS, but I'll talk about it very briefly, and the Nigerian Student Express. But again, for students under the SDS, which is, I'll tell most people that is the gold standard for students' visas application, it's 10,000 Canadian dollars that is prescribed for living expenses, not the tuition. So that particular applicant didn't even meet this income requirement for living expenses. But again, the body language of the account showed that the person could afford their intention in Canada. They didn't even pay their first year tuition, right? And they still got approved. So again, it's always on a case by case basis. And when we review such bank statements, we can tell you, okay, this is how to actually demonstrate better your ability to fund your education. Okay, now in terms of how much money do I need to show for living expense? This is one big question that many people ask. And again, like I'll say, it's not like it's prescribed, like it is publicly available in the UK case. It is not. They just will say enough funds, but from experience and some of the other operational manuals, or we also have what we call case laws, right? Where somebody was previously refused and they go to court um to challenge the decision of the visa officer. We find informations like that, and we also have what they call access to information and privacy, ATIP, where people can go into government documents and find additional things. So that's how come we're able to know this amount is kind of like a general amount they will use for people who are showing living expenses all across provinces in Canada. Now, does it mean that this $10,000 will be adequate for a principal applicant, PA principal applicant who's coming to study in Canada? It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the same amount, because somebody who's going to Nunavut or Northwest Territories may even need just $8,000 or $7,000 to survive in a year. For somebody who's coming to provinces like BC or Ontario, which are the two most populous provinces in Canada, may need closer to about 12 to 13,000. But generally, it's an average, right? Where the government will say, okay, if we see this amount, we're certain that you can fend for yourself. That's as a principal applicant who's coming to study. And for somebody who's coming with their dependents, the first dependent, 4,000 Canadian dollars, and each additional dependent afterwards, $3,000 each. So say, for instance, for a family of 5, it would be about $23,000 you need to show for the principal applicant, their spouse, and 3 children. So, and like I said again, it doesn't have to be that you keep it for 2 months or for 3 months or whatever. It's really about the body language of the account. And the more you show, the better your chances of success. Now, there are additional requirements for a Canadian study permit. Not necessarily like without them is a deal breaker, but with them, you make a stronger application. So something like the statement of purpose, some people call it study plan, some people call it anyways, I've forgotten the third name. So intention, something that has to do with intention. Doesn't matter. The bottom line is they want it could even be in form of a letter of explanation, an LOE that says why you want to come to study in Canada. Should I say it's not a deal breaker if it's not in your application, but it is very critical and may just be that last small thing that sways the visa officer in your way to approve your application. Why do you want to come to Canada? Why have you chosen the course? Did you just pick it off the street, or you actually did some research to say are you a serious student, especially as a mature student? Again, this webinar is really focused towards mature students. So you're 50, you're 60, maybe even 70, and you want to come to Canada as a student. And there are many reasons why you may want to do that. Because again, it can provide a pathway to permanent residency and citizenship. And it's still an economic way compared to business immigration, right? So statement of purpose, demonstrate why you chose the course, how you chose it, why Canada, and so on. Ties to your home country, family ties, if this is one question people will ask, should I put my entire family into the application, or should I apply alone at first? Again, the answer will be it depends. Are there many positive factors in your application, like having enough funds, for instance, or that you have other ties to your home country that we can demonstrate? And in that case, yes, you and your family should apply together, because there are many reasons why you want your family to be with you, whether it's a peace of mind while you're studying, or the fact that your spouse will have an open work permit and they can work full-time and support you while you are studying, there are many reasons why you want your family with you. You'll have the peace of mind to focus on your education when somebody else is kind of picking up the bills with Canadian income and so on. So, but I would say on a case-by-case basis, it might be important that the principal applicant applies first and then the family joins later. Because when the principal applicant applies first, then they have family ties at the time they're applying. It's difficult for the visa officer to refuse, and then they are able to then bring their family later, even while they're still in a student status. So it would always depend, right? Economic ties you may want to show are like assets. If you have a job that if you can get a letter that says, I'm going to go back to my job when I'm done with my studies, that would always be a positive. So I should emphasize that, ultimately we know that many people are studying to immigrate, right? They do not intend to go back to their country, but at the time when you're applying for a visa, now, if I'm coming back to statement of purpose, so in fact, it is better sometimes that you don't have a statement of purpose than you have a statement of purpose that says, oh, my country is so bad, there's so much political instability, Boko Haram is killing people, and that's why I want to come to Canada. That is a red flag, is going to be refused. So you don't say that about your home country, even though it might be a fact, in a statement of purpose. Rather, you'll have to demonstrate why you're going to go back to your country and how that course you're coming to study will be beneficial to your career in your home country at the instant of that study permit application. Now, when you then finish your studies, must you go back? Hell no. Like, who does? Nobody does. Everybody transitions to PGWP, postgraduate work permits, and go on to get their permanent residency. Okay, so for Canada student visas, what are your pathways to PR once you're done? One, which is the ultimate, is the fact that you get a postgraduate work permit once you're done. Every student, after they've completed their study and they're graduates, whether they've attended a master's program or a 2 years postgraduate work permit, postgraduate diploma program at a college level or, mostly, they are eligible to get a 3-year postgraduate work permit, right? And what happens is they're able to obtain Canadian experience through work. Canadian experience is also obtained through study. So whether through study or through work, you're able to gain Canadian experience. And then that Canadian experience is very important for express entry. For people who are familiar with express entry is a PR pathway that allows Canadian Experience class is a PR pathway similar to the federal skilled worker that many people are aware of. I'm trying not to complicate this too much, but bottom line, you are able to claim, it's a point-based system, and you're able to claim additional points for having the Canadian education. And if you probably had a prior bachelor's degree, if you've completed a master's, then you claim higher points for the master's you've come to complete in Canada. And if the study will give you extra points. The work experience you get while you have a postgraduate work permit also gives you additional points as well. So 1 year work experience, 2 years work experience, you'll get much more points. And then sometimes the government also does category-based selection under the express entry, which is the Canadian experience class. And in one of the years, I think it was 2020 during the pandemic, because they weren't going to meet their quota for immigration for express entry, because the government always sets quota for permanent residents they want to select every year. And it's around 500,000 new permanent residents that the government wants to select every year. And because they weren't going to meet their quota that year, they selected, if you're familiar with the CRS score of the express entry, many of you may even have an express entry profile, right? And you have your CRS score. If you want to talk about it, feel free to drop in the Q&A section, and we can use that as an example for everybody to learn. So if you completed Canadian education and the Canadian work experience, you claim much more points. You are then eligible also under that category, under express entry. And in that particular year, the government selected people who had a CRS score of 75. Like, it has never happened in the history of immigration of Canada, where the government will go as low as 75 points to select people who were already in Canada to fill up their quota that they wanted to meet. So being eligible for that particular category is gold, in my opinion. So anyways, moving on very quickly. Open work permits, the PGWP is an open work permit, meaning you can work with any Canadian employer. You're not restricted to the type of work or the employer that you must work with. Or compared to if you wanted to come to Canada on a work permit and you're not eligible for one of the LMI exempt work permit pathways, then you are tied to that one employer. But the kind of work permit you get for 3 years once you've studied in Canada is an open work permit. So again, that's a gold standard for work permits. It does not require a job offer or sponsorship. Like I tell people, some people say, but coming on a work permit is cheaper and I start to make money from day one. But then again, getting the job offer is not within your control. Similar to the UK certificate of sponsorship, it's not within your control. But guess what? You coming to study, first of all, adding value to yourself in terms of being employable, not just on a care job or whatever kind of job. When you come to Canada and you study, whether it be an MBA, I mean, people who come to Canada as PRs still end up going to school because they want to get those higher paying jobs. I mean, I have a friend who came to Canada as a PR, but still went to do an MBA after coming here, took the pain to go to school for another 2 years so that she can get that higher paying job after she's done. And she did get the higher paying job. So are you willing to pay the price before you become PR to get the higher paying job you want, even before you become PR? That is the value of coming as a student, getting your PGWP, having that 3-year postgraduate work permit, and then transitioning to PR. So if for whatever reason you still need more points, because once you're 45 under the express entry, you've lost all of your age points. Like I said, express entry is a point-based system. So while somebody who's 29 and between 21 and 29, they score 100 for age under the express entry. When you're 45, you score 0, and which is 100 points that you don't have to compete with other people who are in the pool. You might be 35 and you've lost 25 points, or you are about that, 30 points. And you might be 40 and you've lost like 50 points or 60 points thereabouts. Again, first of all, getting that Canadian education, the Canadian experience, and if you still need an extra point, the fact that you're in Canada means you can network better to get an employer that can support you for permanent residence with an LMI. An LMI is a labor market impact assessment. So the LMI is worth an extra 50 points. So being here to network, to meet with people, the fact that the employer may have even employed you while you're on a postgraduate work permit may mean that you have that access to tell them, hey, guy, if you don't give me the support, which similar to a certificate of sponsorship, then I'm going to have to go back to my country. And most employers want to keep their good employees. They would likely do an LMI for you. So if you know somebody who's in such a situation as well, and sometimes the employers are not very familiar with immigration, so they don't even know that, how to do the LMI. So people like that, if you have an employer, we help the employer to get the LMI, and you are able to get the permanent residency easier with the extra 50 points through express entry. The second option will be PGWP again. You get your postgraduate work permit after studying. I will warn against people coming in to do a 1-year PGD program, because the length of your PGWP is equal to the length of your study. If you do a 1-year PGD program, then you only get a 1-year postgraduate work permit. That may seem cheaper in the interim, but it will be more costlier in the long term, because then you won't have enough time to transition to permanent residency. You'll be under pressure, whatever it is, you may have to kind of incentivize an employer, which is not legal, to give you an LMI out of desperation. So it may be expensive in the long run, or whatever it is. Anyways, ultimately, do a 2-year PGWP program at the minimum, right? Or a master's degree. Sometimes you could find a 12 months, 18 months master's degree, and even some 2-year PGD programs, because the academic calendar year in Canada is 8 months. So in 16 months, you could be done with your program, right? If you choose to do it back to back and not take the breaks. Some of the benefits of being here as a student is you have the opportunity to work part-time, 20 hours per week, while you're on a work permit. While you're on your study permit, and during the scheduled breaks, you work full-time. So some students want to take their time, that scheduled breaks that they have for like 4 months, they want to work and recoup because then you're not limited to 20 hours. You can knock yourself out and work as many hours as you want, or you can choose to accelerate your program and complete it in 16 months. Really, the choice is yours. So the other pathway is you go to some specific provinces to study, and those provinces offer you an accelerated pathway to permanent residency through their provincial nominee program. And that provincial nominee program will give you an extra 600 points under the express entry, or it may enable you to apply directly on a paper-based PR application. Whether it's option 1 or option 2, after becoming PR in Canada, which is the permanent residence in Canada is valid for 5 years, but basically it's permanent. And as long as you stay in Canada for 2 years out of 5, you're able to renew your 5-year PR all the time. You're a permanent resident. But within the first 3 years, within your 5 years, you can qualify for citizenship. And you don't have to renew anything other than your passport. And it's a legacy that you can pass on to children and generations yet unborn. And I mean, it's valuable to be a PR and then a citizen because there are many benefits, be it the freedom to travel, the legacy that you pass on to your children. If you're a PR, I should warn that criminality is the only thing that can take away your PR. If you are a PR and you have a DUI and not you, and the person runs into some people and kills them, the person loses their PR, they get deported to their country. So citizenship is the only thing that is truly permanent. So that's the benefit of eventually becoming a citizen. Okay, so in conclusion, I think I've said a lot, but ultimately, immigration policies are not permanent. Take that step if you can. I tell many people that immigration, some of you may have even applied for study permits to Canada and may have been refused. Guess what? I applied 3 times in 2008, 2009, and I was refused. And then in 2009, I went to the UK, did my master's there at RGU, and ultimately got my master's, went back to Nigeria. But today I came back in 5 years ago, came back as a PR through the Federal Skilled Worker, the Express Entry, and today I'm a Canadian citizen. So immigration is about persistence, is about getting it right. I know now because I did those applications myself. I was a young school leaver out of school, didn't have money to pay consultants. But now that I'm a practitioner myself, I know why I was refused those many years ago. And when we compare Canada and UK, at that time, if I knew eventually I found out because then I realized, okay, Canada is out of reach. UK, I can get because I had limited funds at that time. And yes, I did get the UK. So if that is your situation, UK might perhaps be, that destination for you, at least for now, and as a stepping stone to come to Canada eventually, if that's your final destination. So this is a quick comparison table that I will use to compare UK and Canada. I'll let Fatih talk about the UK side. It will be more interactive. So Fatih will talk about it and then I can add a little bit on that.
Okay. Yeah. What are the pros of
and sorry, Fatih, we can actually just take one and then I talk about the Canadian side, like one.
Okay, that's good. So I thought the visa processing for coming to UK is a lot faster as compared to like Canada, from what I've heard and from what I've seen people, go through.
Okay, that's very true, right? Like even if immigration changes, it doesn't change very much over the years, right? And as a young school leaver, then I didn't have money of my own. For Canada, I kind of just got a sponsor's account, an uncle's friend, and said he was sponsoring me. That doesn't work for Canada. It didn't work 13, 15 years ago. Maybe some people are, I've seen some people who just have some exceptional grace and, it worked for them. It could be a lazy visa officer, right? Who didn't have the time to look so much, just looked at the balance. This one has, because they usually have volume of work to go through. So let's just say such people have grace. But if you don't have money, enough money, and you want to just throw money, they call it demonstration funds in Canada immigration. Because when we read GCMS notes, we see some of this, their um, comments the visa officers make. We call the officers' notes. And in one case, they told the guy it was demonstration funds. And truly it was demonstration funds because they collected from uncle, friend, this one, and put everything. They know from the body language of the bank account that it was demonstration fund. In my case, I just got a company account from somebody I knew. He had over 500 million naira at that time. But again, they said, well, there is no link between you and the company. We don't believe it. Refused 3 times. The first time was a personal account. That was the third time. I'm like, okay, it won't even work for Canada. Let me just face the UK. And with UK, I got money from somebody, put it in a fixed deposit kind of account. And I got to UK and I found my way to pay school fees, the day of working some jobs to pay and all of that. Anyways, bottom line is if that is your situation, it can be a lot simpler to go for the UK, but you can use it as a stepping stone as well to Canada. Canada is more stringent in screening the students that they bring in because, and the reason is in the UK, if you can't afford to pay your tuition, what are your options? If I may ask, what do you do, Fatih?
Um, if you can afford just now, if you can afford to pay your tuition, I think the first thing is the school will write you and ask if you could work out a plan of, on how you're going to pay it. So if you come up with a plan, say you're going to be paying every month and you keep to it, then they would be fine with that. But if you work out a plan to pay every month and you're still defaulting, then they might be forced to like write to the home office. Home office they're the one that issue visa. So they will be forced to write to home office to withdraw your visa and you might
Your
be able to
visa,
book the
and
plan.
then you go
Yeah.
out of status, and then they may
And
deport the
deport you
person.
back to
In
your home
Canada, a lot of
country.
people, before it gets to that stage, they just seek asylum. So there is a very relaxed asylum process in Canada. So
Oh,
many students who are not able to meet up their obligations in terms of paying tuition, they do that. So they are very stringent because they know that loophole is there. Whether it's their visitor visas or their student visas, they just are more strict because they don't want you to come in and become destitute. And there's a category
asylum.
called
Yeah.
destitute students, and then you're able to transition to refugee and so on. So that's it. Sometimes I would say sometimes their visa processing is lengthy. When my students ask me how long will the visa processing take, I'll say something like 2 weeks to up to 6 months. So it's always important to start early. But what we've seen, the trend we've seen is that they process faster when the admission date is near. So they are prioritizing based on the admission date of the student. So if we still submitted a September an application for somebody who's coming in September about this week, and hopefully because they use a lot of AI now to prioritize their applications, the student might get their visa before the end of September resumption date that the person is going in. So let's talk about the weather.
Okay. I also
Let me
have a
let me
bit.
start by talking about the weather of Canada. Canada is cold. So if you can manage, you know, then you're welcome to come. It is very cold, especially in those provinces that offer cheaper school fees, which I know cheaper school fees are the ones that most, students, especially from Nigeria, targeting. So those places are very cold. Those kind of cold, I would say, who sent me who sent me to come abroad. So Canada is very cool. That's something that you should bear in mind. At least I would say 10 out of the 12 provinces are, very, very cold. So, Fatih, the
So
weather in the UK.
yeah, the weather in UK, well, I believe is not as cold as Canada, but then it's also relative. So for me, I've been living here for like 13 years, and even just now, I'm sure some of you would have noticed that I've been turning off and turning on my video because I have to like blow my nose and things like that. So the weather is relative, the coldness is relative, but then I believe UK is not as cold as Canada. And
Okay.
say some of you are willing to come to Scotland. Scotland tend to be colder than England. So if you're coming to Scotland, then be a bit more prepared for the weather. Yeah.
Yeah, and then proximity to the home country, especially Africans, Nigerians. The UK is much more closer. I think 6 hours to Nigeria. Canada is more like 13 hours, so it's farther. So the frequency of being able to go home or having people come to see you may not be that much. But that said, there are many, many Nigerian population here, and students, usually feel at home, or in fact, Canada is very multiculturally diverse. So wherever the student is coming from, they usually kind of make it home and find their food and find like, whatever it is that makes them feel like home. So um even though it's farther to their home country, they're still able to make Canada home. Um, the UK is a much smaller country, so it might be easy to travel around and see family and friends that may be living in other, do they call them provinces in the UK? What do they call them?
I would say other countries like like I said earlier, I'm in Scotland, and from time to time
Okay.
I'll go down to England to like see family, friends, and whatever you. And for us, we could decide to like drive down, and it could be like 7, 8 hours. But
Mhm.
I don't know. For Canada, my younger brother is
For
in
Canada.
Canada.
Mhm.
He's in
Some
Canada, and
some parts,
yeah,
some
he
parts
just
are closed that you can
yeah.
drive, but
Wow. And he was
most,
telling me he had to move from Ontario to Alberta, and it was like hours by flight. And I'm like, within Canada? So yeah, with UK, if you say you live in Scotland, say you live in Edinburgh to go to Manchester, it will take you about 45 minutes by flight. It could take you about 7 hours if you're traveling by road, driving by yourself, or maybe 4 hours by train. But yeah, it's quite a
yeah,
smaller country.
you'll be surprised. Like we're in the southern part of Ontario, and some parts of the US are closer to us than some other parts of Canada. So talking about driving between provinces is a no-no. Maybe within the same province, like from Toronto within Ontario to Ottawa, it's about 5 hours drive. But um, again, you probably get to some parts of the US like Buffalo or Rochester within 2 hours, 3 hours before you get to Ottawa. So it's a very big country. It's about 5 times the size of Nigeria. So it is really big. Um, some of the cons we'll talk about. Do you want to talk about the cons of the UK?
Yeah, the cost of tuition and living expenses, I think, is quite high in the UK because just of now, I've got a few friends, few families that have just come from Nigeria to like study, and I know what it is like converting from naira to like pounds, and I know how much it is they're paying, and the cost of living just now has also gone so much up. So I think it's quite high in Canada, in UK as compared to Canada. As I mentioned earlier, I've got a younger brother in Canada, and sometimes we do talk about our expenses, and I think we expenses in UK is quite higher.
Yeah, so I think just by even going by the currency exchange rates from because many people who are coming to study, first have to change naira to buy that currency, the currency of that country. If it's the UK, with tuition being about, let's even talk about
About
living expenses.
10,000.
Let's
Yeah.
leave leave tuition out because tuition depends on the cost and several other factors. But living expenses with the UK, even if we average it to about $1,000 per month, for 12 months, that's about £12,000, right? Canada is 10,000 Canadian dollars now. If we even go by 10,000 to 10,000, that's even reducing the UK funds requirement to £10,000, which is it is more, right? Um, £10,000 is 17,000 Canadian dollars. So one pound, one British pounds is 1.73 Canadian dollars. So just by that comparison alone, you can see that it's a lot cheaper. So that's why some parents, especially and even mature students, prefer coming to Canada because that initial money they have to change or even to show for proof of funds might be easier for Canada over the UK. Um, PR pathways. You want to talk about that, Fatih?
Yeah, with the PR pathway, it's not as easy as Canada, from what I've heard, and from my experience as well. So if you're, this is not to like discourage anyone willing to come. I'd mentioned we started as a student as well, and we go through the skilled worker road, and we go settled, and we eventually become a British citizen. But the pathway is not as easy as it may seem, but it's, I believe, is a journey. So for student pathway, if you're coming in as a student and you get to the graduate road and the student pathway are not counted, like they don't count towards your settlement. So it's as if, or you've just, you're just in UK. Your settlement towards the 5 years of becoming an indefinite leave to remain. To get an indefinite leave to remain starts from when you get a skilled work visa. So it's not so easy, but then it's doable. It's you can do it. Like we did it. So many people are doing it, and if you still want to come to UK, you can still do this. And if you're willing to like still go to Canada, you can come through. I've got so many friends that are presently in UK now. They've come for their masters, and they've used it as it's more like a step to like
Stepping stone.
to move to Canada. So if that's what you want to do, I think it's even more. It's kind of like easier if you're willing to move from UK to Canada as compared to moving from your home country. So if you're moving from Nigeria to Canada, it's quite other as compared to if you're moving from UK. Yeah.
Directly from your home country. So
Yeah.
let me share it this way, right? I'll use myself as an example, even though it was what, 13, 15 years ago. I didn't have a lot of funds. It was more practical that I could have demonstration fund work for me for the UK at that time than it could have worked for Canada. Went to the UK, I could have used this as a stepping stone to Canada. And even if I didn't use it at that time, I just went back to Nigeria because again, we still had faith in Nigeria at that time. Oh, I don't know. Well, things took me back to Nigeria, let me say. Um, the masters I obtained from the UK was what made me eligible for the Canadian Experience, the Canadian Express entry. Because if I didn't have a master's, I wouldn't have claimed those higher points for masters or have the skills transferability factors under the express entry. So it could still be a stepping stone in that if your points are not ranking very well in the express entry now because your highest level of education is a bachelor's degree, by obtaining that UK masters and just kind of having that okay standard of living and maybe even being able to hustle and work some odd jobs to save up more money for your proof of funds or for more funds to come as a student to Canada, again, it could be a stepping stone. And like Fatih said, sometimes it's easier to then apply from the UK to Canada at that time because then you would have gathered more funds, you may have had more work experience. Some more a higher level of education. And I'll give you an example of one of our clients who they moved to the UK from Nigeria, and from the UK they moved to Canada. They didn't have any other travel experience other than because Canada also looks at travel history sometimes, but then again, there are case laws that shows that they shouldn't use previous travel history as a reason to deny somebody their opportunity to come and excel in Canada or to visit Canada or whatever it is. So we would always address all those concerns in our submission letter, representative submission letter, when we're representing a client that doesn't have travel history. So, but bottom line, they were in the UK. The processing can be way faster because the demand of people requesting for study visas from the UK is even lower because sometimes it's just prejudice, right? The volume of study permits application they get from Nigeria, a lot of them crappy. Excuse me, because again, many people don't know the requirements or what fits and what doesn't fit. When I say crappy, from people using fake bank statements to again demonstration funds, those are like not the very gold standard of application, if you get what I mean. So because they see that volume of application and the quality of applications from Nigeria, it just has a higher chance of refusal sometimes, right? But if you do the right thing, ensure you address everything adequately, then you're successful. Like in the case of one of our clients recently, she was coming with her 3 children. She was refused a UK study visa. And then she was like, you know what? Since I was already refused UK, I might as well just try Canada. And then when she spoke with us and we told her the things that will fix, she got approved a Canadian visa, even though we are saying Canada has a more stringent process. But again, if you do it right, even Canada cannot refuse your visa application. Trust me. And if they do because they made a mistake or they are being silly, or sometimes, you ask yourself, if they get 1 million applications, will they approve all 1 million? They probably won't because they have a quota that they want for students. The same way they have a quota for permanent residents they want to select, they also usually would have a quota for temporary residents they want to come in because they're also watching the impact on the demand on housing and a lot of other social factors, demand on healthcare and things like that. So, but then If they will have to refuse because they've had too many, trust me, if your application is well done, they will not refuse your application. And if they do, we have ways to fix them. And I don't know about UK visas, and we'll talk about that in terms of a right to appeal. We call it judicial review in Canada, where a visa officer has refused an application, perfect application, and we will tell them if we're reapplying and there was nothing wrong with the first one. Sometimes we choose to reapply. We can either reapply, seek reconsideration, or go for judicial review. We'll tell them if we choose to reapply to say, look at this very well without prejudice, because if you do refuse, then we're going to go for a judicial review. And the judicial review process is very unbiased. It's the visa officers, the minister's representative, that's what we call them, which is the representative of the visa officer, and your counsel, a lawyer, who goes to court on your behalf to argue why your application met the requirements. So ensure that when you're doing your study permit, your application is judicial review worthy. And it's whether they like it or not, they have to approve your visa, except you've had any serious issues like criminality or medical inadmissibility. So we take a lot of time up front to check that you are eligible. And once we do your application, if refused, that application can be challenged at the courts through the judicial review process. So I kind of digressed a little bit, but I just wanted to show why, ensuring that you meet the requirements and all of that, and even address some of these lengthy processes or stringent applications. So the cost of living and tuition are lower, quicker and easier PR pathways. Um, for students, like you said, their time spent as a student in the UK is not counted towards their application for PR. For students in Canada, their time spent as students and on a postgraduate work permit counts towards their ability to apply for Canadian citizenship. So first of all, time spent in Canada, once you meet the points, permanent residency is all about points, right? Once you meet the points, even if it's from day one you arrive or immediately as soon as you finish your study because you've claimed some extra points for having that Canadian education, up to 30 points, I believe, you claim those points, you make PR, you can apply for permanent residence immediately. And then when you become PR, say for instance, you came and you studied for 2 years, in Canada, every day you spend here as a student or on a postgraduate work permit or any temporary status counts as 1 year. So if you ended up spending, you remember I said 3 years on a PR would make you get citizenship, within 5 years of becoming PR. So within your 5 years of becoming PR, if you were here as a student for 2 years, that counts as 1 year. So you'll only have to do 2 years on your postgraduate work permit, and your 3 years, you're able to apply for citizenship. So it can be quite quick, and the pathways, I mean, to get to citizenship and even PR, and the pathways are just more easier because Canada is an aging population and they do want people. I don't think there's any other country on this planet right now that is taking immigrants as many as they are taking in Canada. So once you meet the requirements, those immigration programs are there because they need those people who will come in and work and pay taxes for longer. Otherwise, their economy is going to decline. It is real, it's a fact. You say, yes, they say they want people, but they keep refusing visas. Yes, they'll refuse visas that are not quality. And they will keep refusing, even though they need people, because they want those quality applicants who will, they have a quota for refugee, but they want to reserve that quota for refugee for the people who really need it, like the people who are coming from Ukraine. Everybody sees it. The whole world still sees it, right? But for many Nigerians or other people who want to take advantage of the refugee application, which they do and they scale through, and I'm not bashing anybody who does that, but they don't want people who live in Lagos to say Boko Haram is attacking them and, they now steal that space from somebody who's really fleeing from terrorism or whatever in Syria or in Ukraine. So that's why they want to ensure that the student who came in who is coming in as a student is really a genuine student, will stay on their pathway to as a student, get onto PR and get their citizenship ultimately. Let the refugees and the quota they've reserved for the refugees be for those who really qualify as refugees. Because if people who are not real refugees fill up those spaces, then they won't be able to give it to those people. So that's that. In terms of employment opportunities, Fatih, I'll let you talk about it for the UK and then I'll come back
Okay.
to that of Canada.
So I would say in terms of career opportunities, it's a bit limited in UK. And why did I say this? UK would only give you employment when they really need you. So they have something they call the shortage occupation list. So it's only when your occupation comes on this list, they would give you that job. If his jobs are just if it's the job that anybody could do, then you don't stand a higher chance of getting that job. So so if you're coming on a student visa, it's advisable you come on one of the jobs are one of the courses that is relatable to jobs that are on the shortage occupation list. Say you've got like an arts and history degree in Nigeria, you don't want to come to UK to do art and history as well. You probably will, I'm not saying you will get a job, but you probably not stand a higher chance of getting a job. And you do want to get a job to make you, settle in UK. So that's kind of limiting because I know in Canada, be you whatever you want to be, you will still get something. And that's not to say if you've got like a lower degree, you can't get a job in UK. Just of recent, we've got like so many people coming in on the healthcare visa. That's I don't want to say lower job to an extent because it's not as well paid as some jobs. But um all in all, if you're coming to UK, if you're coming on a student route, make sure you come on one of the jobs that are listed as shortage on shortage occupation list. Make sure you check UK, check this list. Make sure you're not just taking any course. Don't just think okay because it is so easy to come to UK. It's so easy to make this as a stepping stone. Don't just come in on just any course. It would be good if you're coming in for like if you've got like physics degree in Nigeria, you could come in for software, cyber security. We're talking about engineering. Anything engineering is good in UK. If you're in sciences, I mean research scientist myself, you in sciences, you tend to get a good job, a fantastic job. And we like most of us are Nigerians, we don't just want to like do just anything. We want to just, you want to spend so much money to come to, study in UK. And at the end of the day, you want to earn something that is relative, that is what you've earned or, what you've spent, I mean. So, yeah, it can be limiting, but there are opportunities. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. You talked about science and engineering only. How about people who studied arts? What
No,
courses could they do?
What courses could they do?
That would be, well, okay, we don't have to get too specific if you don't have anyone off the top of your head right
I
away.
have to think of
But like
probably
you said, they should check on
yeah.
the government website, check the shortage list, and ensure you're going for courses that are like that. Now, while for Canada, I wouldn't say that there are occupations that are in demand anywhere in the Western world, like healthcare. But I mean, if you come to Canada you had arts and history in Nigeria, and you come to Canada to study arts and history, you could get a job in admin, you could get a job in anything, really. There is shortage in every industry in Canada as of today, honestly. So, but ultimately, choose something like if you're coming and you're doing an MBA, you'll get a job in one of the top banks, just because you have a postgraduate work permit for 3 years. And again, you'll be able to accrue enough points to be able to transition to permanent residency. So it's not as limiting. People who are in IT also are in demand massively, and they have, rewarding careers afterwards. But ultimately, you come in as a student, you can do any course, you could do business, you could do anything really, history and justice, and you could still be on a good pathway to permanent residency and not be in a very desperate situation for a certificate of sponsorship or an LMI in Canada as we know it. And there is no glass ceiling. Like I know people who, some people get lucky, right? But like, I mean, even like Fatih, her husband got a sponsorship in an IT firm. There were many of his colleagues who were let go and ultimately had to leave the UK and before they could transition and get their citizenship. So this is fact. It is not us trying to nudge you towards Canada or the UK. For me, myself, I lived in the UK. I also had my master's there. So, but let's just say you just have to be praying every day while you're in the UK to be able to transition to permanent residence and really have that status. It's not as such in Canada. Worst case, right? You just declare that same asylum that we were saying don't do, right? Worst case. And many, many people have done that. And then even if their refugee claim fails, there's what we call H&C, humanitarian and compassionate grounds for granting citizenship. They look at how long, they call it community integration, right? They look at your integration, they look at the fact that you've had children here, they look at different things, best interest of a child, and based on, okay, you're not qualified for anything at all. Okay, let's just bash your permanent residency. That's H&C. I mean, I have a family who, in their case, they walked in through the US. Many Nigerians do that. And even after there are several refusals of refugee application, because they both stayed employed, they granted them here as H&C. So that is Canada for you. I'm not sure if all of those, again, I'm not an expert in UK immigration, but to Canada, I can speak clearly about it. And, the pathways to permanent residency and citizenship ultimately are just numerous, and even the career opportunities are unlimited, I should say. Um, to get started now with Love to Immigration, call us, email us. If on every slide you see at the bottom, our website, our email, support@lovetoimmigration.com. Call us, WhatsApp us at the number below. We can review your evaluate. We can give you a free evaluation of your eligibility, and if you're eligible, we can give you a quick call to discuss your family's needs and plans. For the UK, we're representatives to thousands of schools across the UK as well, and we can aid you receiving an offer of admission from a UK licensed student support sponsor. And for Canada as well, we're also representatives to many schools, and we're able to handle the process from admissions to the visas, as well as JR and whatever else. And if you've been refused, you receive the procedural fairness letter. We're able to help you work on that, or even to review. We offer a DIY version of consultation where you could do your application yourself, and we just review with you in an hour and check that everything looks good. Anything that you need to fix, we'll tell you, you can go fix it yourself. So full representation, we're licensed to do immigration. You have to fill out a use of rep. We'll submit through our rep portal. Name it from visitor to so again, sorry about the noise. So for Canada admissions and study visas, again, we're able to offer you full representation from start to the end. Whether it be, you've had a refusal, reconsideration request, and so on. We had a recent case on a reconsideration request where the man had submitted a family visa application, man, wife, and two children, and then one child was refused because they didn't receive the birth certificate he had omitted to submit for both children. And he sent the birth certificates for the two children on the same day. One was refused, one was approved. And of course, the one that was refused, how do you expect that? I think the girl was like 4 years old or something like that. How does he start explaining to her that only you were not given visa? Anyways, I told him, he was asking, we were talking about he had inquired about a business immigration pathway. And I'm like, okay, but do you have a valid visa? Are you able to visit? And then that was when he talked about his daughter. I told him you can do a reconsideration request. And in less than 2 days of us putting that for an application that was already refused and closed, we sent in a reconsideration request, basically like a plea. And if it's an error, we point it out about their error, but it was more like a plea and what the circumstances around why he didn't send it they gave him 10 days or so, or 7 days to send it in. He didn't send it within that date, but even then they had not closed it then, and he sent it before they closed it. And basically the facts around it, we put it forward, and within 2 days that application was reopened and approved, saving them a lot of time in terms of going to reapply and all of that. So whether it be reconsideration requests, responses to procedural fairness letters, whatever it is, or even just ensuring that your application is judicial review worthy from the onset, we offer it all. Full representation to just, you are doing it yourself and we just review. So contact us. These are a few testimonials from Love to Immigration. Follow us. Oh, I missed that. Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn. I'm not even sure what this other icon is. Do you know? So because we have a full team who are managing
Threads.
this. What did you call it?
It's Threads. It's a new one.
Okay, Threads. Yes, that's the new one that by Facebook or Meta, whatever it is. So LinkedIn, YouTube, we're constantly going to be doing lots and lots more content. So please follow us. Free information. We can answer free questions, from time to time when we can. And then these are some of our testimonials which we post on our Instagram mostly. Study permit approval, This was approved in 2 weeks. I think that was for Bolu. He had a previous refusal. Okay. Yeah. So again, when you submit a perfect application, the approval can be very fast, even though people claim we've had an approval in 5 days. The woman had done two previous DIY applications. Basically, she did it herself. She wasn't our client. Then she came to us, and then we did it for her. And in 5 days, the application was approved. That was Bumi. This is Tony, one of the few ones we've gotten approved recently. She's in her 50s. She's had almost a 30-year gap in study and career. She was a full-time mom. We addressed all of that in our statement of purpose, and her application was approved in an Ontario college. This other one is Evelyn. Her study permit was approved in 1 month. She had a refusal from the US. She was one of those people who got caught up in, there's just some things that happens with us Nigerians. Many Nigerians went to give birth to their kids in the US. One of them as well, in 2016 from Nigeria. And whenever you go back to try to renew your visas, they were just refusing the visas. And she was refused and her visa was canceled. And she has gone back several times to try and get the visa approved back. She never got it. But look at her today. She's in Canada on a study permit. So whatever the situation is, like the comments under that post read, we are overjoyed for our client after previous refusals from the US and Canada. In fact, Canada also refused her. Her application was finally approved. We can't wait to have her here. And now she's here, Evelyn. So again, whatever your situation is, it's always unique. It's never a one size fits all for everybody. We are here to help. So Q&A, if they're UK visa related, Fatih will try to answer again. For some of you who didn't hear a disclaimer at the beginning, this wasn't to offer any immigration advice. So if you're getting immigration advice from your consultant or lawyer, please listen to them. This is just general information. While I'm licensed to do immigration in Canada and I'm liable for any advice I give to my clients, Fatih is only a content developer and a YouTuber, and she likes to research. And based on experience, I have massive experience personally myself with the UK immigration, because I went there as a student and all that. And she has actually transitioned to British citizenship. I have transitioned to Canadian citizenship. So it's more of passion. And for me, for Fatih, and for me, it's passion, and I'm licensed to offer immigration advice. So we'll go over the questions very quickly. I'll just scan through the chat section very quickly. The chat section is not supposed to be where you're supposed to leave your questions, but I will go through very quickly to see what may be there. Then we focus on the Q&A section. The person asked, what's the next step for Canada? Again, call us, WhatsApp us on the number on the screen, and we can, if you want to consult with us, we can offer that. Or if it's just a DIY session you want to book with us, we can offer that as well. For dependent visa for Canada, again, once you have status as a principal applicant, dependents can get that. If you're already in Canada, your spouse gets a spousal open work permit, and your children also get open study permits. So you're eligible to bring your family along to Canada. Please, are you at the highest age required? Are the highest age required for certificate undergraduate? There is no upper limit. People who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s can come to study. I'm not sure what that was. If I have children that are up to 18, what will be their status? One of them is done with secondary school. So if you're coming as a student to Canada and you have a child that is above 18, that child is also going to a university or a post-secondary school, ultimately college or university, then they also have to pay and come as an international student. The children who are not yet at post-secondary level, then they can come with you and go to school for free in a primary or secondary school. So publicly funded ones. Oh, okay. So this person asked, what's the meaning of PGWP? PGWP is postgraduate work permit. PNP is provincial nominee program. PR is permanent residence. LMI is labor market impact assessment. One thing you'll find with Canada immigration. EE is express entry. We use a lot of abbreviations, so pardon us, and again, you can't expect to learn everything with immigration in one day. Some people are quite learned with all these abbreviations and all that, because in fact, they even know some abbreviations that I don't know. like, they just coin their own, let me put it like that, because they are in these groups and having to type all these lengthy words, from time to time can be a lot. Okay, somebody else helped to answer. For a 50-year-old matured student that did not qualify for express entry, what are the chances of getting PR? There are many chances, like we've discussed. There are pathways to permanent residency. Perhaps those questions came before we got to them. In terms of the fees or that we charge, again, I won't want to get into a lot of detail. It depends on a case by case basis, right? If it's a DIY, you can afford $200, $250 is what we'll typically charge, depending on how bulky the application is, to review it with you. And if you're looking for full representation, and depending on the complexity of the case, whether you've had previous refusals or whatever else, or you're coming with family, somebody who's a principal applicant can expect to pay $1,500 to $2,000 Canadian. Somebody who's coming with family, they get discounts depending on the number of families they have, and so on. So somebody asked for the UK student admission and visa. Okay, I'll come back to the UK questions later. Let me just quickly run through the Canadian ones. So somebody asked, is it only student visas we do? We don't do only student visas. We do all types of immigration, from visits to judicial reviews, work. Okay, let me categorize the temporary resident visas. Visits, visitor visas. We recently got a visitor visa for a family of 6. Father, mother, and 4 children. The benefits of having a visitor visa, I have a video coming out soon. So that's why it's also important to follow us so you can get more information from those videos. You are able to transition to work permit if you're coming on a visitor visa between now and 2025 February. So it's a visitor visa is very valuable. Let me put it like that. So applying for visitor visas can also help you come in, network with people, get job offers, and all of that. So we do all forms of immigration application. So, and recently I would say Canada has been very friendly with giving visitor visas. So if you want to do it on your own, do it on your own. If you want representation, we're happy to help and represent you, or just do a DIY and review whatever it is you've done. I have been struggling to get a study permit for my son. We received another refusal this July. Oh, how do we justify ties to home country job opportunities? Very generic questions for very generic reasons for refusals. Yes, they're usually very generic in those letters. When we want to know the details, we request for a GCMS note, and we see the officer's notes and can fix it. And sometimes even with those generic questions, because again, even though we're not visa officers, we've worked with them so many times that we know what it is. Like recently, one of our clients was saying, oh, how about you request for the GCMS notes before you resubmit? I said, you know what, we don't need it, because just GCMS notes, they're supposed to take 30 days under normal circumstances, but they have so many requests now that sometimes they're taking as long as 3 to 6 months. I don't think it's worth the wait to see the GCMS note, but like I can tell you in my own application that I did 3 times in the last 13, in 13 years ago, I can tell you what was wrong. It was because I had demonstration phone. I don't need this. I don't need to, because of experience, I don't need to see GCMS note now to know why I was refused then. So if I see your application, I can tell you why it was refused. We had a similar situation to the woman had enough funds, but then she was refused because she didn't have enough funds. Because unfortunately, some immigration consultants, I beg to say, they may not know what they're doing, or because of the load of cases, they just give it to people who just feels rubbish. Because in that case, I then saw when I reviewed the application, living expenses, they put $2,000, how much she had available for that. Clearly, they would say she doesn't have enough funds, because how do you put $2,000 as being available for your living expenses on your form? So some small mistakes and errors sometimes could be the reason, not necessarily that you didn't have enough funds, but was it represented accurately and things like that. So there were a few things that we tweaked and then we resubmitted. We don't need to see the GCMS notes in such a case. So if for this person, what I'll say is request a consultation with us. We can look into the details of your case in a paid consultation, which you can book with us. $200 to $50 would advise you. And then if we will take the case, we will discount whatever it is you pay, 200 or 250, from the actual consultation fee that you'll pay in the future. How do you justify to IRCC that the student is seriously interested? You justify that in a statement of purpose, right? We don't write statement of purpose from scratch for our clients, because then is only this one head, right? And I want to write statement of purpose for 50 people and it will be different. Yes, their personal circumstances are different. And we would typically request, we give a guide, the client sends us something, and then we make it better. We perfect it before it goes out. But we want to see, again, it's okay. The other word I was looking for statement of purpose is a personal statement. So a personal statement of purpose has to be personal to you. We don't know all of your life experiences. So put in a little bit of that. So we give you questions that cue you to answer them, and then we perfect it to ensure that your application sails through. I would like to know if you support. I would like to know if you support refusal cases. Oh yes, I've talked about it. We even have a video about refusals on our channels, Instagram and TikTok. Refusals, right? Reconsideration request, reapply, and judicial review. So we'll be able to look into your case and advise which one is best for your situation. Somebody's interested in a work visa. We get this request all the time. Like I said, getting a job offer is critical to having a work visa. LMI is what we call it in Canada. Certificate of sponsorship is what they call it in the UK. Whatever it is they call it, you have to get an employer to give it to you. It's not within your control, and we don't help people to get it because then an employer-employee relationship is based on many factors. Are you able to do the job that they have? Do they have a job open for you? And so on. So we don't get involved with that. If you get a job offer, you get an employer who's willing to support you, then we can do the application for the LMI because it's an application we have to do to the government of Canada to allow the employer be able to offer you a job. So be careful as well. Don't lose your money. Rather save that money and use it for study. Where you see people will tell you bring money to this employer so that they can give you an LMI or a certificate of sponsorship. I'm not saying it doesn't work. In some cases, if you get a genuine direct link, it's not legal, so I can't coach you to do it, but it's up to you to decide if you want to do it or not. But again, when you come to study and you get your postgraduate work permit, then you can work with any employer. There are jobs. You find people who come in as a visitor and they're like, I got this job, I got that job. But when they ask me if I have a job, if I have a work permit, and I didn't have, that was where it ended. So some of them, I tell them, then tell the employer you can link them up with an immigration consultant that will help them with getting the LMI approval because the process can be a bit complicated and employers just don't like to go through it. They'll rather have somebody who already has the rights to work in Canada. So coming as a student first, getting your PGWP, and even while you're a student, I have a student who came in for a PGD. She was working as a structural designer in Nigeria, a civil engineer. And the minute she got here, she got a full-time job. Luckily for her, there was a temporary policy for a while that allowed students to be able to take up full-time jobs. So she has gotten a full-time job even before um, she finished her education. So she has a full-time job and she's still studying. So, and she's earning good Canadian dollars as a structural drafter or something like that. And they even trained her. Anyways, hers is a beautiful story. We'll be starting. I mean, it's sometimes I have so many stories of clients that it's just uh impossible to share them in a webinar, like all of it in a webinar like this. So we'll start what do you call them now? Some sessions where we'll bring some of our past clients and they'll just share their experience and talk about how they were able to get a job. Some got their job offer from Nigeria, some, came as PR, some came as students. Whatever it is, they'll be able to share their experiences. So please follow us so that you'll get more information about that. Somebody is asking if they've been refused, how soon can they reapply? Immediately. As they'll tell you that you're able to reapply immediately as long as your circumstances have changed. So if something wasn't done properly and you're going to fix it in a new application, then reapply. But if, for instance, you need to go and put your finances in order, then it's however long it takes for you to put your finances in order for you to reapply. Some of the questions I won't really answer. A Canadian visa expat real, what is Form 206 for? So be careful. I don't know what Form 206 is. There are many, many scammers out there, I should say, for Canadian visa application, job offer, whatever it is. If you send us something, we can help you clarify for free that it is fake. Check when you're going to work with anybody who claims to be a Canadian visa expert or immigration consultant that they are genuine, they're legitimate. The only number we would contact you from Loft Immigration It's 416-492-1222. If you get any contact from anywhere else, it's not us. So because some people also would then use the name of Loft Immigration or other genuine immigration consultants and lawyers and send you something as us. Always call us and say, are you the one that sent me this invoice? Are you the one that did this? Always go on the company's website. Our website is www.loftimmigration.com. If they add ng to the end or anything else, it's not us. So always do your due diligence before you choose to work with any person who's claiming to be an authorized representative for Canada. If it's too good to be true, if they tell you, bring 1 million naira and I'll get you a job to Canada, it is probably fake. And you're just going to lose your 1 million naira. It's not a lot of money, but it is also a lot of money. So keep your money and use it to eat well. If you can't afford to come as a student, at least use it to eat well. Don't give anybody your 1 million naira that would not lead to anything for you. Don't lose your money. Even if it's 50,000 naira, please. Some people will say buy phone for 50,000 naira. Please keep it. Or you should go and dash it to charity. Keep your money, do your due diligence. Don't just give people money anyhow. It's really appalling, but I mean, it is what it is. Somebody is asking how they can contact us through WhatsApp. The contact is below. What is the age limit for an undergraduate course? There is no age limit. It might be a bit difficult when you've not had prior undergraduate study to come for an undergraduate course, but it is possible. So I won't say it is not possible. I would say come for a one-on-one consultation as long as you have every other thing. For instance, some of the most successful business people never went to school. But they have the funds if they wanted to, if they choose to now go to school. So anything can be justified. There is one standard of approval in Canada immigration. It's called reasonableness, right? Is it reasonable that this person wants to come to school now? So once you meet the reasonableness threshold, you will be approved, and your judicial review, if refused, will be passed. So the government also doesn't want to waste money sending their lawyer to court to argue. So sometimes when you just put that initial, we call it a leave of judicial review in, they just approve you like, well, this one is a troublemaker. Just go. We don't want to waste time and go and taxpayers' money to send the lawyer to court. So again, it just has to pass the eligibility, the reasonableness standard, and we always win. We aim for 100%, and most of the time we get 100%. So if your questions weren't answered, we're sorry about that. We will be available on WhatsApp to answer your questions and give you a free evaluation of your circumstances. If you qualify, then you'll be speaking with me one-on-one over the phone. After we first evaluated your circumstances, we'll send you some questions. You will answer them there on WhatsApp. And then for people who qualify, call them for a 10 to 15 minutes conversation to say, so this is my circumstance, this is the money I have. It's funny sometimes, right? When we have a list of questions when we ask, what's your age, what's your education, highest level of education, work experience, and ultimately, how much money do you have in support of an immigration application? And then some people will say, don't want to disclose or something. Then how do we advise you? It's like going to a doctor and saying, I have a boil on my armpit, but I don't want to open it. Like, I'm just saying this because if you come to WhatsApp, you'll get those questions. And it's so that we can nudge you in the right direction. If you can't afford study, then we can tell you, okay, consider visits or try to build up your finances or whatever it is, right? Just be open. And if you have much more money, then we can say, if you're 50, business might be more ideal for you. There are many people who are in their 50s who are saying, I don't want to study again. So whatever it is, if you're open about your circumstances, you haven't given us your account number or anything like that. So even if you tell us you have, and we deal with many HNIs, I should say, because we do many, many business immigration applications. So even if you tell us you have $1 million, so be it, right? We can't come and reach you to get it. We're based in Canada, and we offer immigration services, and we're bound by the highest ethics and professional conduct, right? I don't want to go to jail because of nothing, right? So thank you for posting that, Mega DME. Special shout out to you. You posted our phone number for whoever it was that was asking. So thank you. So Fatih, I'll let you answer the UK question very quickly. It was one who said, can I even see it? Well, they were saying that you have to keep your proof of funds for 28 days to get the what was it? Pass? CAS?
Pass number.
Yeah.
So the
And
person
that
was
can you use the
asking.
same 28 days for the visa application process?
So I reply the person. I think it's very, very
Oh, you
important
did.
to use. Yeah, I think it's very, very important to use the same fund. And of recent, the universities in UK have started reviewing your proof of funds because they don't want to have like a refusal because it counts towards their, I think it kind of like affects their license. So nowadays, universities will review your proof of fund to make sure that you have that sufficient proof of fund, and that's what they will be giving. They would use to give you the unconditional offer. So they will review your proof of fund. If they find it sufficient, if they find it like genuine enough, they will give you unconditional offer, and you then use your proof of fund to apply for your visa with your CAS and unconditional offer. So it's very, very important you use the same fund.
Okay. Thank you
Yeah.
there, Fatsi.
And sorry,
Okay,
let me add
go
one
ahead.
more thing. Because UK will say you keep the money in your account for 28 days and within 31 days of you applying for a visa. I think it's very, very important you leave even while you're applying for the visa. It's very, very important. This is like from personal and from people that I've spoken with. It's very, very important you leave the money till you get your visa approval. The reason is if for any reason you've made a mistake in your visa application and you had to like reapply, you need the proof of fund to reapply. And if for any reason you've moved the proof of fund, how do you then reapply? How do you justify that? So it's very, very important you leave the money in your account till you get your visa application, your visa approval. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for that. But like I said, contact us on WhatsApp. We would answer every other question we did not answer today. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us, and we hope you found it interesting and informative. We will post it on YouTube in the coming days. So it's important that you follow us on all those channels that we showed earlier. Loft Immigration on all channels, really. YouTube, Instagram, YouTube will be the one that can take this. So if there's something you wanted to forward to a part and also valuable information that you'll find useful um, going forward. Thank you and take care. Have a nice evening. Bye.
Thank you.